Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dylan, I'm your host. And today, guys, we are going to be covering proven systems for project management. We're also going to talk about how to get more done than you've ever been able to before, as well as I'm going to talk a little bit about vision, making sure that you have a visualization, a picture of what your life is going to look like in the future. And honestly, we're going to start a little bit with visualization, mainly because this morning, as I was doing my visualization, my 10 minutes of dedicated visualization for phase one of the Live Hard program, I taught myself in the visualization of questioning, is this something that I'm actually wanting out of my life? Or is this a picture that I've seen on Instagram or the internet somewhere that really just isn't me, right? It's not the thing that I'm obsessed about or passionate about or the thing that I really want out of my life. This is something that somebody else had in their life that I thought maybe, that would be kind of cool to have. Uh, but it just wasn't my picture or image of what I wanted out of my life. And I think so much in what we see on the internet, what we see from all these people that we follow and whatnot, is painting a picture of a life that is theirs, right? It's not really ours. It's not the one that we wanted or thought we wanted or anything like that. I fell into that trap a little bit in trying some other things and, getting halfway away from engineering a few years ago and realized after that venture didn't really work out the way that I wanted it to, is engineering is the thing that I am meant to do, right? Software is the thing that I'm meant to do. Being in this industry and construction is what I am really good at, right? It's what I enjoy, it's what I talk about, and it's really cool to be in this industry. So for me, visualization and the things that I was picturing, I caught myself questioning, are these the things that I really want out of my life? Are these the things that I really want to have in my existence? Is that the house that I want? Is that the life that I want to live? Is that the office that I want to live in? And or to I say live it, but be, at for a third of my day. And the things that I kept coming back to is you can only choose really a few things in life, right? The house you live, the car you drive, where you work. In my case, I get to pick the office that I work in. Those types of things is you have kind of a bucket full of choices, and with that, you can have anything that you want. You just can't have everything. And so when I think about this from a visualization standpoint of what you want out of life, that you really got to be selective. What are the few handful of things that you want, and then be so stinking clear on what it is that looks like, right? So your fidelity needs to be very high. And by that, I mean, if you picture a record, the record has all these ridges and fine lines uh, through it, right? That ultimately play sound when rotated on a turntable. So in that, all those ridges you don't really see when you're holding it up. You kind of see the outline of the ridges, but not all the little uh, bumps and everything else in there. But in your visualizations, you need to have all those details kind of worked out. What's the, if you, for me, the office that you want to have or the house that you want to have, um, the office that I want to build for the companies and all that kind of good stuff is, well, what does that office look and feel like? What should it be? What do we have in the office? What's the smell of it? What's the layout of it? How does it look like? And you really start to go through this kind of scenario, if you will, of figuring out what you want that office to be. The smells, the carpet, the colors. Is it glass or is it wood? Is it drywall, painted? How nice or plain, or what are the things that you have in like the rest of the building that you want to portray? Like, what is it? And the same thing goes for like your house or car or whatever, is the look, the feel, all those little details, and focus just on the one piece of it to make that vision and visualization very, very clear. Like I redid my vision board here this weekend and spent some good amount of time on it. Like I kind of know what I wanted. Um, but I added some clarity around it and it's really cool. And I added a ton of pictures of like the same thing from different angles that I kind of want in my life. And so with that, it's really important to have such specificity and such clarity around the things that you do want that you're able to ultimately bring those into reality, right? So from your head into this world, this plane of existence, and all that kind of good stuff. So that's my little take on visualization and bringing things into reality is being just super clear on it and then making sure that it's really yours. I found myself questioning that here this morning, so I thought I would share that with you guys. But today we're talking about proven systems, um, covering how to get more done than you've ever been able to, and it's really how I've been able to do 70 projects this year by myself. Been a proven system for me to get more done than I ever have before. So why even talk about project management? And this kind of goes back to what I was talking about. Like I am really good at systems. I'm really good at processes, and ultimately really good at maintaining relationships with clients, but kind of sort of through a system, and others are much better at kicking down the door, breaking into those relationships and getting opportunities. I am really great at maintaining those relationships and keeping them to get more opportunities. But why even talk about project management? Why is this something that should be important? And what are kind of the real world consequences of having bad project managers uh, on your team? So, according to the FMI, um, they surveyed, this was in 2022, 600 construction leaders, and they found that poor communication, poor project data account for 48% of all rework on US construction projects. 48% of all rework is due to poor data and poor communication, which comes down to bad project management, which accounts for in 2022. So this is probably 30% higher in 2024 uh, than it was in 2022. So which I'll do it for you here, but in 2022, $31.3 billion. And that was for only 600 firms. These were probably the larger firms, but $31.3 billion. Add another 10 million to that. So it'd be like $40 billion today is what was wasted because of poor communication and poor data on projects, leading to all that rework. So this is no small problem that we're facing, and really just shows how important good communication really is. Obviously, this is billions of dollars in lost productivity, all due to poor project management. Um, those moving schedules, moving deadlines, having to redo a bunch of work creates also a ton of frustration. And this is honestly why construction has some of the highest suicide rates of any industry, is because not only are you getting pushed to meet deadlines, meet schedules, you're then having to redo all the work that you did because somebody didn't tell you, either the plans weren't correct, somebody didn't show up on time, so you had to make do with what you had to meet the deadlines that you ultimately then had to redo the work. Which again, it's just a frustrating cycle. And this all really stems from poor project management, poor systems, which we're going to get into. But poor project management is really the crux of this. And I bring this up because one, it's true. Construction does have one of the highest suicide rates. We do have, billions of dollars in rework and fix or changing schedules, frustration on projects. And the environment that you work in has a lot to do with your happiness. And I don't bring up happiness as like this, everybody should be happy at all times, doing everything that they want. Like, no, you're going to have to do stuff that you don't like a lot of the time, but you should have a general level of appreciation, happiness for the work that you're doing, for the job that you're engaged in. You should have some level of fulfillment and happiness out of that. And the old adage is, people leave bosses and not jobs. And I think this is ultimately what rings true, because people move companies frequently and often it's still in the construction industry. Now we do have people leaving it, right? There's always going to be that. But at the end of the day, they're leaving bosses and not a job. Um, so let's look at that specific thing of bosses, project management. And the boss can only work as well as the system or environment that they're in, right? And then the environment has a lot to do with the systems that they're put in, which has to do with basically top down management. And some of that is going to be the project managers that run those projects. So, because a lot of times, like a guy in the field, they're going to report to a foreman, but that foreman also kind of reports up to the project manager who runs the entire project, making sure that things are there on time or helping with it. And so that project manager has a lot of influence on those projects, even though it might not be somebody's direct boss, they still have a lot of influence on it. So you might have guys that end up leaving companies not due to their immediate boss, but due to project managers that they're ultimately having to work for, but their projects are so screwed up that even as much as their boss has tried to mitigate it and their boss is great, right? Their direct manager is great. The overall system and environment they're put in because of these project managers is so poor that they ultimately have to leave those companies, which again is not something you want to have happen. Because if project managers don't know when to get information to people, if they don't know the right information to get, if they don't aggregate the information so that's in this big stream of data that people really have to comb through, it becomes cumbersome. And ultimately, that project manager isn't doing their job and aggregating data to effectively pass it on to the next guy down the line, right? Forwarding emails is not a good solution for any of this. Like, aggregate that data to folks and ultimately make their jobs a lot easier. So we know we need a system, right? We know we need a good system to operate, to manage projects that creates a good environment that people are happy with, that they, get what they need when they need it. And obviously this isn't going to be perfect, but here's the thing. To get things done in an orderly fashion, you need a systems. You need a way that folks aren't rushed, but at the same time can focus kind of in on one project at a time. This is where like diligence and systems and maintaining the standard is so critical for yourself, for your firm, and ultimately for kind of your own peace of mind that you're getting things done, that you don't have this weight of all these projects hanging over you. And I think that for me, at least in the past, stemmed from a lot of my kind of anxiety, my stress levels was all these projects hanging over me. And not that I could have gotten them done any faster. I was getting projects done as quickly as I could. We just had so many and poor systems that I was having to overcome a lot of challenges that I shouldn't have had to overcome in a couple of the firms that I worked in that created a lot of this stress. Other firms I've worked in have been really, they were pretty stress free on the whole. That felt pretty good working there. And just went on to do different things, right? Thought I wasn't being challenged or pushed, which again, grass is always greener on the other side. So this is where diligence and systems ultimately come into play. And what I'm going to get into next is going to be easier said than done. This is something that is going to be really hard for a lot of folks. It's going to be a lot of withdrawals for a lot of y'all. Like I have some of these as well. I'm getting a lot better about it, but it's one of these things that will be your biggest productivity bump if you're able to actually implement this into your life. One of which is like, is it okay to not answer the phone for a couple hours? Is it okay to call people back? You do that when you're in other meetings. So why wouldn't it be okay to do that for your own meeting with yourself to do the work that you know needs to be done? Same with emails, right? To have kind of a set time to get to emails, to respond to them, to knock a bunch out in a set period of time. That is going to be one of the most productive things you can do instead of just constantly checking your email, constantly having it up. If you're able to close out of it, not check it, not do anything with it for a while, and then when you go back in, a few hours later, lunchtime, whatever, to then blow through the rest of your emails, right? Read it, respond to it, forward it, whatever you need to do with those. communications is to then, forward it on. I know this is really hard, but ultimately this comes down to your focus, your attention is being constantly stolen from you. You are constantly being bombarded with all this other information and things that really you'll get to. It's not time sensitive for the most part, where you can then do the work that you know needs to be done, have a time to call people back, answer those emails, and then get back into the work that you again know needs to be done. That is a big priority. And again, your clients want you to get work done. So when you have the space, the time to effectively sit down, work through these problems, design the systems that you know you need to design and this really goes for mostly all the office folks, right? Your guys in the field, typically you're not on the phone, unless you're the foreman or superintendent, then you're probably on the phone more frequently, but that kind of ends up being your job is to respond to people, deal with things as they come up, answer things in real time, right? That is a superintendent's job, is to answer and deal with all those issues, still having time to, do their reports, answer other items, deal with schedule changes, like all the other work that they need to be dealing with. But at the same time, a lot of their day-to-day activities has to do with responding in real time to problems as they arise, right? Because on a job site in the field, those answers do matter. The things in directing people where to go in real time do matter. It saves time, saves money, all that kind of stuff. So most of what I'm talking about here has to do with the office folks, right? This is your estimator, your project managers, your all the design teams, and their respective people. This is basically all of your office staff. So in this is things like email, whatever, phone calls, and there's going to be some of this too where like your project coordinators are maybe ones answering the phone, taking out questions, getting it to PMs, having times that they can go to their PMs to, rattle through all these questions, things like that, right? So the PM isn't getting bombarded. They can do all the paperwork that they need to, and still, get things done and out, like all the schedule changes or purchase orders or whatever else that they've got to get done, all the paperwork that they've got to do, and they have that time to do it and not constantly interrupted by phone calls, and they get 10 or 15 minutes here or there between phone calls or meetings. So very important that things like this get kind of scheduled, that we understand how the other side's working and what we can do to actually improve. So, and with Office F2s, like you've got multiple projects going on at once. You're answering to multiple people, you're juggling priorities. And so if you're constantly answering the phone or emails, you're not really having the time that you need to mentally clear a space to work on the project at hand, right? To go through all the details of that project, to, really take the time to dig in and go through it. And then also on the other side is understanding like how much time is this thing going to really take for you to do and get taken care of. When can you do it? What's your time blocking really look like? And this is where we're ultimately going to is like legitimate time blocking, making sure that in those time blocks, you're very focused in what you're doing. You put the phone away, you don't have emails, nobody can call you, basically text, you're not answering text messages. You're not on Facebook or Instagram. You're none of that, right? No social media, no text, no phone calls. Like it's fully silenced. Nobody can get through. Your email's off, and you're just focused on work for the allotted time period that you have, right? 2, 3, 4 hours to get what done, what needs to get done, so that you're able to move on to the next thing, right? You're able to get tasks done, spend the time, the mind power, brain space to effectively accomplish it. And at the end of the day, that's all your clients care about anyway, is you getting the job done, right? You getting estimates out, you getting proposals done, you getting designs accomplished. Like all the office work that we do in front of a computer take serious amounts of time, long hours dedicated to that. And so setting aside multiple hours of dedicated time so that you're able to effectively produce whatever it is your outcome is, right? Proposals, drawings, estimates, whatever it might be, that is hugely important. And the reason I bring up having this, and then I'm going to get into checklists, but it is probably the biggest problem that we have is distraction interruptions, right? In the office, and I just did this poll on LinkedIn, is like, where do you prefer to work, right? In the office or at home? Well, at home, if you set up your environment properly, you don't have coworkers constantly just coming into your cubicle or space, right, to interrupt you with a random question and to, you know, delay you off of the thing that you're trying to work on, right? Like I got bombarded all the time with questions in the office or people that just wanted to chat because they didn't have anything to do. So they'd come up and interrupt me, which was nice. It's great, social, all that kind of good stuff, but it really killed my productivity because I couldn't get anything done until everybody left, or I had to come in early. Like I could not get shit done during the middle of the day because I was just bombarded with questions. So it left me basically very unproductive um, in the day because I just needed hours by myself to work and not get interrupted by petty whatever. And again, it's good socially, good for collaboration in some ways, but really meetings are good for a lot of that, right? The office meets a lot of social needs. It doesn't always necessarily meet a lot of business needs. Um, it, that's my take on it. Now, some people work better in going to a dedicated space, right? So this isn't to say that like your house is the ultimate environment for that, right? Like your house could be very chaotic, right? You've got kids home, you got dogs, you got whatever, like you got a lot of stuff going on. And so you can't actually work at home because you're going to get interrupted more at home than you would in the office. So you prefer to go into the office and work because it's an undistracted space relatively from your home. So this is where it really comes about a clean and work environment, a nice place to be ultimately where you just don't have distraction. I think that that's ultimately what people are looking for, right? That's why people ultimately go to coffee shops is partially to be around other people and then they could put their headphones on, be in their own little world. And while they're around people and feel social, they're still able to be in an undistracted environment because for the most part, people aren't going to come up to you and ask questions or bombard you with this, that, or the other thing. They're truly just going to be, drinking their coffee, doing their work, whatever. And that's kind of a neat thing, right? So I've worked at coffee shops for a long time. And that's kind of the joy of a place like a Starbucks or your local coffee shop is you're able to go in there, put some headphones on and just grind it out. So that's the big one. So being under constant attack is part of some of the office environment, and so really this got split into home and office were about equal, and then really like 40%, 45% were hybrid, right? But this goes down to a lot of social things. Like you want to see and interact in person with the people that you work with, and that's just part of it. And in the design side of things, it was like if you're not seen in the office, you're not productive type of thing. Like, and so people kind of sort of judged you based on how long you were in the office, not necessarily on how much work you got done, but were you there? And to me, that's a very poor judge of work ethic or whatever. Uh, it does have its place, but at the same time, like there are people that stayed late and got a ton done, but they got it done after hours when everybody left. And then there's others that, couldn't get shit done ever. Didn't matter what happened. So it very much varies by the person, but a lot of this is like undistracted workspaces is what it takes. So that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And the thing in construction is we have so much to cover, right? We have hundreds of items per discipline that we need to check, right? We have like even painting, right? Are the boxes cut out? Did the painter cut them out? How did they get cut out? Whose deal is that? What level of finish are we at? When does the painter need to come back to ultimately deal with um, cleaning up, all the little nicks and tears and all that kind of stuff that happen in a project? Does the painter miss any spots? Is there anything that we need to look at? Right. There's basically all these massive checklists, most of which we have in our heads, not written down, but there's massive checklists that we have that we go through on each and every project. Electrically, we've got, lighting controls, and then even just on drawings, you've got For lighting, you've got regular normal lighting, you get emergency lighting. Are these the right type of fixtures? Are the fixture tags correct? Is the fixture schedule correct for that specific fixture? Are these circuited correctly? Is the switching correct for them? Do we have different lighting zones within this? How many lighting zones do we have? Do we have a daylight zone or not? Do we have occupancy sensors on the ceilings? Do we have adequate coverage with those occupancy sensors on the ceilings? Are there dimmers or vacancy sensors, right? Like all these questions. Is this a advanced lighting control pad that we need to have within this room for audio visual, right? And have different scenes. What should the scenes be for each of these? And we go through all of these settings, all of these choices, all of these selections. And that's just touching the surface of one thing called lighting. So with a lot of this, we have these massive checklists in our head, and our head is not always reliable, nor is that easily transferable. What is transferable and has been proven in another industry with also a very long checklist that is done each and every time that uh, for this particular industry. And it's used from the youngest guy just learning to the guy that has, 30, 40 years of experience. And that's a checklist for pilots before they take off. Each plane has its own unique checklist, but they have their instrument checklist. They have all the stuff that they go through. It's hundreds of items long, right? Their walkthroughs, all this stuff of what they need to do to be able to take off, right? Have a safe flight. And I would ultimately argue that checklist is probably the most important thing in aviation. That checklist has probably saved more lives than anything else. It's not the dramatic feats of Sully and flipping a plane, over the Hudson or any of that. While that is very impressive, that checklist before takeoff to make sure that all systems are go, that you're not going to have a problem immediately upon takeoff or, 50,000 feet in the air, 35,000 feet in the air, you're going to be able to not take off, solve those problems before you take off so that you don't have a problem in the air where you can't, you don't have a maintenance guy to solve that issue, right? You get it taken care of before you take off. And this is why ultimately, you know, planes are very safe in travel. Like it is one of the safer modes of travel because of this checklist that is done prior to every single takeoff. And they go through this checklist. And since you started training and getting your pilot's license, they kind of embed this checklist into you that this is the thing that you need to do before every takeoff, right? Because again, if something happens up there that could have been prevented, like again, when you're 10, 20, 30,000 feet in the air in a plane, and let's say that you're in a solo plane, right? One a little Cessna or something, like you are it. There's no maintenance guy, there's no AAA to call, there's no nothing. Like you're it. So doing that checklist will prevent or mitigate most catastrophes. And I think that we can really learn from this checklist. Now, the thing that we all hate is paperwork, but this is a thing that ultimately is what construction is massive checklists. And like it or not, we need to embrace the checklist and use this on every single project that we have going forward and improving upon that checklist. Like if we find something that is not on the checklist, that we find it, check it off or add it to the list so that we can check it off for future projects. And so I think that this checklist is so important, but often kind of relegated. It's not something that we embrace, and we kind of hate it and don't use it whatsoever. Yet it would be the probably the one thing that would help us in our QA/QC process. It would help us improve our projects and everything that we do with them. It also would enable us to train people faster, more effectively, and efficiently because they have a simple checklist to like, hey, is all the lighting in the grid? Is it do we have emergency lighting in each room? Are they circuited? Are they tagged? Do we have lighting control zones? Are there occupancy sensors or vacancy sensors in the room? Does the room need one? Is it ceiling mounted or wall mounted, right? Are there dimmers or single pole switches, right? What are the lighting control spaces for this? And again, like that's something that I run through in my head as an engineer's done this, thousands of times. But for a new person, right, for a new engineer, new designer, we need to basically have that list outlined for them so that they can, one, it's easily transferable. They don't have to remember this list of 100 things. They can look at a list, go through it, look at the drawings, go back and forth between the two, and have an easy thing to look at, an easy thing to convey, so that they're able to wrap their minds around what's going on, what are we checking for, what are we looking for. Simple training tool, easier for QA QC, and then they can kind of check their own work. And you do this room by room by room by room, and you have a basically massive Excel sheet with all the rooms, make sure lighting is covered in every single room. And then the same goes for every single other system in the entire project, right? Lighting, power, HVAC, low voltage, data, security, access control, architecture items, right? Structural items, whatever those checklists are throughout. Do you have those things done for each and every space? And so this is hugely important. It's something that we should be utilizing on more and more of our projects. And the same goes for like punch lists, right? Hey, these are all the things that we need to cover in a punch list. Do you have those things covered and checked? Yeah, the superintendent can do it through his walkthroughs. It makes it a lot easier for a younger superintendent to run down the list, of what needs to be covered. Senior superintendent has by nature done most of this in his head because he's seen it so many times that he just has that list and he runs through it and does it. But again, we're all human. We all make mistakes. It's why, again, veteran pilots use a checklist, the same checklist as the guy with like 1 year of experience, as the same guy's 20 or 30 years of experience. They use the same exact checklist. It should be no different in construction. We should be using checklists to go through because, again, it just saves you so much time, effort, energy, and allows you to train people faster. So, in review, project management is super important. One of the most crucial roles. It'll make or break your organization. It'll make you money or it'll lose you billions of dollars. One of the two. Live by checklists. It's going to save you a bunch of time, effort, energy, and money. And time block and be stringent with those time blocks, right? If you say you're going to work for 2 hours on a given thing, work for 2 hours on a given thing. Don't have your phone, don't check email. Pretty simple, straightforward. A lot harder to do than it is to say, but again, it will make you a lot more productive. Because again, this is why I've been able to do 70 projects on my own this year, is the simple fact that I time block, I turn off notifications, I don't check email while I'm working on these projects. Now, some are better than others, but it's something that I have been very aware of in turning off email, turning off my phone notifications, putting my phone out of reach, and just focusing down on projects. And it's been able to, and it's allowed me to be very productive on my projects. So with those time blocks, remove all distractions, cut everything out. And for all you project managers, department heads out there, for your teams, like ultimately make a list of what they're working on. Check it in daily, see how long things are going to take and what they're going to ultimately do. So if somebody is working on a task, let's say you check in, you have your morning meeting, right? We've covered meetings on the podcast before. So you have your morning 9 a.m. meeting. Hey, what is everybody working on for the day? You write it down. Hey, let's be a little more specific. Instead of just saying that you're working on lighting for this project, say that, hey, I'm going to do lighting for unit A and B, and I'll have it done by noon. Then you check in with the entire team at noon or 1 o'clock, whatever, after lunch. Say, hey, did you get done what you said you were going to get done? Okay, why not? Right. And this is probably an individual check-in from project manager to individual contributor. Like, don't bring this out in front of the team. But hey, what are you going to do? Or what did you do this morning? Did you get it done? Check in with them. Why or why not? Okay, good. Okay, what are you moving on to now? Okay, good. I think that's a good priority. You do lighting for units B and C now that you got A and B done. Very good. Cool. And we can move forward, right? Then the project manager can let the team know, hey, architecture, lighting in unit A and B is done. Mechanical, same thing, right? You guys can now coordinate in units A and B for this project. And, those 20 rooms that are in those units, you're now able to coordinate with. So simple thing, like very simple. and it'll allow you to get a lot more done, right? It's time blocked. It's accountability on making sure that everybody does the thing that they say they're going to do, right? You check in with them, you hold them accountable for it. They have a very specific task to do in a very specific time frame. They say what it's going to take, right? So unit A might be massive. So maybe in that morning, it's only unit A that they're going to be able to do. So they get unit A done. Okay, great. Afternoon, unit B, right? And then with this, you can move on a faster cadence. Things get done faster. You check in with people quicker. And it just allows things to move at a much, much faster pace. So instead of, let's say that you had a 4 unit building, so unit A, B, C, and D, and let's say that each unit um, took a day to do historically, maybe 2, right? Let's say it's that bigger building. So each unit would take a day to like do lighting, but that's realistically, but in the past, it took maybe 2 or 3 days to do. So now you're shrinking everything by 2 or 3 days. So instead of 3 weeks to get this building done, you're going to do it in 1 week, right? 4 or 5 days versus, 15 days of getting that thing done. So again, just it's speeding up time frames. It's holding people accountable to them. It's keeping them in a time block. It's keeping them focused and on task. And really, that's the biggest waster of time is people coming up to your desk, answering emails, phone calls, all that kind of good stuff. Um, it's really not good stuff. It's actually bad stuff. It ruins your productivity. It takes you away from the thing that you're doing, and ultimately, costs the firm more time, rework, getting back into the groove, all that kind of stuff. So again, guys, in review, we covered project management, super important, and then this is really like time management of yourself, right? Live by checklists, time block, be stringent on your time blocks, and you'll get a lot more done. Again, this is how I got 70 projects done this year by myself. Was through this time blocking and being super diligent and effective with my time, making sure that I'm on task and doing what I need to. It's also allowed me to, be home at a normal hour, allowed me to train super effectively for my 100 miler this year because I was able to kind of zone in and do the things I needed to do with my time. So for all of you, make this a great 2025 and stick to these time blocking items, and you'll have a much more productive year. Thank you all for listening, and until next time.